I'm Lauren Jenkins, originally from Texas and usually live on the road, but when I'm not on the road, I live in Nashville. And the thing that inspires me as an artist is really life and stories. I think that's kind of the whole point of us being here, is experiencing life and sharing stories. My music is hopefully good music. That's kind of what I'm after anytime I'm recording or playing a song. I want it to be good. But in terms of genre, it's interesting because I actually don't really abide by that rule of having to stick with a genre. I think some of the best music, like you listen to music from the 70s, and I think that could be classified as country, even though you're never gonna hear it on country radio. So for me, my music is very heavily story and narrative driven. It's experiences from my life, from the lives of people around me, which I guess falls in Americana, singer-songwriter, but I think it kind of blends a few different genres. Because, first of all, I also don't really think that rules are entirely necessary. I think that the basic rules that we all should abide by should be inherently understood. Don't be don't be a jerk. Be kind to each other. Like those things, I think that's rules of living, and that should just be understood. But for me, with my path, I didn't follow any of the rules. I didn't know half of the rules, and that's part of my journey. And I think as humans, when you take that pressure off of yourself of, well, this is the way that I'm supposed to do things, when you take that away, then you're allowed to make really interesting choices and have different experiences. And the way I see it is, we're only here now, so you might as well go after that. So yeah, rules and I don't get along, which is also part of why No Saint, that record, and this new record that I'm making independently, Miles on Me, are two very different things. The bones of No Saint carry over into this project, but unfortunately, I was working with people on the No Saint project that demanded I follow their rules, which really didn't sit well with me. And that influences the music. When you take the rules away, then you have the freedom to make your own choices and decisions and go where the music wants to go. And that's why I'm that much more in love with this project, because I've had the freedom to make all those choices. When I approach music or anything creatively, I like to look at it as a conversation. And when I have a conversation with someone, I want to sit down and get the whole thing. I want the story, I want to be there, I want to be in the moment. I don't need your quick bio. And with singles, to me, that's kind of the quick bio way of approaching music. And I get that people want new music all the time, but I want to hear the whole conversation. And that's what an album does. So for this record, splitting it up into 3 parts allowed me to tell part 1 of the story, and then part 2, and then finally part 3. And also, it's kind of easier to record when you have money. So part of splitting it up, that's allowed me to finance this record over a course of time, as opposed to selling my 2 front teeth to pay for the record. I think part of it kind of happened naturally. As I was writing this record, I started kind of storyboarding the order and what songs, and I started to see themes. Part 1 of the record is quite literally where No Saint left off, like where that character was standing in the road. What does she do next? Where does she go? And that's part 1 of this second record. But again, I think part of it too is, back in the day, our attention spans were so much greater. And I kind of want to force people to remember that and to see and to kind of stretch people and say, like, okay, this isn't just a single. Like, can you sit down and listen to this part and sort of think about where it's going to go, and then eventually the whole thing, and take all of it in, as opposed to just a couple of tracks. That's kind of been my world for a long time now. I hit the road when I was 15, and I was playing in bars with a fake ID, and I've logged so many miles. And that, like, the road is really where I feel at home. And I think being around people too. A bar is a great place to get stories and songwriting material because you see all of the different stories, especially depending on what time you go. So yeah, they definitely pop up in the music a lot because I write about what I know. So I've spent a lot of time in both of those establishments, the highway and bars. Good storytelling wins, always, all the time. And I actually don't look at them that differently. I think storytelling is the main thing that I've been obsessed with, whether it's photography or making videos or acting or songwriting. The idea is to serve the story. I mean, even this interview right now, we're telling a story. You're asking me questions. That's the most interesting, fascinating thing about life for me. So with acting, it's a different side of storytelling because you're telling someone else's story with the script, but you still have that opportunity to bring your humanism into a role, and that's a really fun challenge. With songwriting, you're telling, at least for me, you're telling your story, which is incredibly vulnerable and a difficult thing to do, and you have to be ready to share that story with an audience. So they're two different beasts, but they're kind of serving the same master, I think. I think, like anything, it gets easier the more that you do it, and I think with age comes experience and wisdom, and the more that I've been honest and vulnerable, the more I've seen that there's a need for that. Sometimes I've realized, even in my own life, but in others, we're not that vulnerable with each other all the time. And it's a protective mechanism. And what I've learned through telling stories and music is that it's okay to be vulnerable, and actually it can be really healing. So with the right audiences on the right night, when I decide to go there, it's one of the most amazing experiences. And I've seen it create this ripple effect among people all over the world of being vulnerable and connection. And again, that's kind of, if we're not doing that, then I feel like we're wasting our time. But we were recording last night, and again, part of the fun thing with this record is by taking my time to make it, and because I get to be the captain, we had, I think, our final recording session last night, and the day before, I sent a song to my two co-producers, and I was like, I've been thinking, I think this should be on the record. And they were like, oh, dang, I think you're right. Okay, we'll chart it out. We'll just go for it. So there have been some last minute changes and surprises, even though the train has left the station and part one is out. So that's been really fun. In terms of the date that it's actually coming out, when it's done, it'll be soon. It won't take a whole year. But again, I want it to be exactly what I want it to be. I don't think I have one person that I look up to as a hero because, again, I know that all humans are flawed and none of us are perfect, but there are songwriters and artists that inspire me from their craftsmanship and then also the way they appear to live life. Bruce Springsteen would be on that list for sure. That's having a long career of being able to do this dream for decades and decades. That's something that I've always been after. Patty Griffin is another one. And it's really comes down to storytelling for me. And then it comes down to how the human at least appears to live life. Like songwriters and storytellers that seem to give a damn, I'm on board with those. Hopefully there's no more pandemics in our future. That was a doozy. 10 years ago when we went through that together. Been writing a ton of records and been able to meet some incredible people and play some shows like the McLemore and have 1,000 more of those under my belt. So we just wrapped this studio session. We were tracking cello and violin and all that kind of stuff until like 2 o'clock in the morning or something, and then slept for a couple of hours. And my co-producer and guitar player who's playing the show with me tonight, we were so excited to get in the car to drive up here, running on no sleep. And I think the reason why is because at the McLemore, they're doing something that other venues don't necessarily do. And for me as a songwriter and storyteller, it is such a breath of fresh air to come to a place like this where it's understood that this is a night that's about community and it's about sharing and listening. And it's not that we don't want you to have a good time, but we want this to be an intimate experience where we're all sharing this conversation for an hour and a half. And people are not there to get hammered drunk. If you want to drink, that's great. And you want to get drunk afterwards, fine. But it's just a different thing. And I think the more venues that exist, like the McLemore, where those types of experiences are happening, I think that not only will people discover music that they don't know, but they'll start having conversations that they normally wouldn't have as a result of this type of show. So I just think it's really beautiful, this community aspect. And I was even talking to people that are here way before the show is about to start, and there's just a different vibe to it. So I guess just hats off to the McLemore for getting it, and when a lot of places don't necessarily.